back. Jacob Zuma has been ordered to hand himself over to police within 5 days. That's to start 15 months in prison for being in contempt of court. He, of course, defied an order to appear at the state capture inquiry. Lawyer Ulrich Roux joins me now to discuss this and lockdown regulations. Ulrich, thanks for your time. Let's start with the Zuma judgment. Of course, legal experts clearly get excited seeing the details here. So just how scathing is this judgment?
Hi, good evening, Sean. Thank you for having me. Yes, certainly. Upon listening to the judgment handed down today, one could almost sense the Deputy Chief Justice really being angered by Jacob Zuma's behavior in finding him in being contempt of a constitutional court order. And remember what Jacob Zuma did is he refused to testify at the Zondo Commission. He was then ordered to do so by the Constitutional Court. He then ignored that order blatantly. He was then granted another opportunity to testify at the Commission, and then he chose, quite bizarrely so, to address a letter to the outgoing Chief Justice, Mogoeng, in which he scathes the Constitutional Court with regards to the judgment that they handed down, and even went so far as comparing the court with the old apartheid regime. And, you know, you could just sense that in handing down the judgment that the Constitutional Court is the highest court in our country, and a person cannot simply just ignore a Constitutional Court order and then one step further go and criticize the order that the court has made. And that was just demonstrated today, a very scathing judgment. And I think the right judgment in the circumstances. If the court had not sent Jacob Zuma to imprisonment, then it would have been seen as a completely inadequate court, given the fact that he had been granted so many opportunities to comply with the court order.
Nevertheless, it was a split judgment, wasn't it? Majority for the 15-month jail time, but 2 justices against this. Of course, this does happen often, right? But the Jacob Zuma Foundation is trying to use this to discredit the judgment.
Well, they will naturally do so, and one could have expected that. In most cases, I would say 90% of judgment handed down where there's a full bench, which we call a full bench is where there's 3 judges. In this instance, of course, all of the 12 judges of the Constitutional Court weigh in on the judgment, but there's always a minority judgment. The fact of the matter is that the 2 judges who did not agree that Jacob Zuma should be sent to imprisonment also found him to be in contempt of the court order. So on the basis of the application, all the judges were in agreement. But yes, I mean, you know, they can try and use the minority judgment to discredit the majority judgment, but they won't succeed. The majority judgment is the judgment which is accepted, and that is the judgment which is not appealable and cannot be taken on review. This is, from a legal perspective, it is the end of the road for Jacob Zuma, given the fact that the Constitutional Court is our highest court in the country.
All right, let's move on to the lockdown regulations. The police minister today warning people that they will be arrested or fined. He also mentioned those who are encouraging people to defy the restrictions, right? But he didn't go into detail about whether there will be consequences for them. Is there any action, any law that allows government to actually take legal action or jail people who are encouraging citizens to break the lockdown regulations?
Yes, indeed. The lockdown regulations have been amended. So the Disaster Management Act, which came into being, the amended act, which came into being on Sunday evening, makes it clear that if a person incites other people to act in contravention of the lockdown regulations, then that person could be found guilty of an offence and could face jail time of up to 6 months or a fine or both. So a very interesting development in the Disaster Management Act, I must say, and I think that it goes hand in hand with the President's speech on Sunday evening, in which he made it very clear that people must think carefully before they send messages on, or before they push the share or the send button, inciting people to not adhere to the regulations, spreading fake news, etc., etc. We are are living in a time where people have been confined to their residences or their workplaces, and naturally they will be spending more time on their online devices. And it is a very dangerous thing if people start inciting, other people to not adhere to the regulations or to start spreading fake news. And that is the reason why these regulations have been amended accordingly.
Yeah, it's also very interesting that you have Vinpro representing many winemakers going to court to legally challenge the decision for the latest booze ban. You also have other liquor industry, people coming forward saying that they want the scientific research used to come to this determination to ban the sale of alcohol. Do they have any legal grounds?
In my opinion, I don't think so, Sean. I think that people must try and act reasonable at all times. These are, of course, and it is that word that we've come to hate so much, but these are unprecedented times, to say the least. The entire world has been affected by this pandemic. This is the third wave hitting South Africa now, and the research shows that the Delta variant is spreading like wildfire, excuse the pun, but that it is a very real threat. And I think that all of us out there know of people who have fallen ill and who have tested positive and who are faced with severe symptoms that they are fighting at this very point in time. So the regulations, regardless of the fact that the people think that government have acted in the correct manner in the past, pertaining to the use of funding, etc., at this point in time, there is a very real threat of the Delta variant. The numbers are very high, and people must act in a reasonable manner accordingly. The only duty on South African citizens is to try and to lower the spread of the infections, and they need to adhere to the regulations, and the regulations have been drafted in such a way to assist the country and to assist society with trying to flatten the curve, so to speak.
All right. Thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. Ulrich Roux from Ulrich Roux and Associates.